Hello. I'd like to share with you a little bit about the CS1 Game Engine API, specifically the Design API. The Design API has recently been something I've been focusing on, particularly because the industry, whether it's general application development, if there's some type of especially graphic user interface involved, there's going to be normally a design system that's accompanying that project in order to kind of abstract away a little bit of the design parameters, like the colors, maybe the layouts of things, the sizes of things, things that are specific to a certain design, so that the design team can work fairly independently and update things, and the development team can then just implement different components and so forth and reference different design parameters, and then simply update to a different theme, for example, and everything can just dynamically change without having to go and redevelop anything, and that's a marvelous thing. And that's part of it. Another part of it is just the design system specification, by literally having everybody on board doing the same colors, the same layouts, these same properties that are important to a particular design, having those all specified. I'm using kind of the theme as the specification. I was using the word spec before, and I thought that theme would just be a little bit more natural, especially for people just getting on board with this rather than trying to overcomplicate things. I just used the word theme. What you see right here in front of you, this is the A-frame kind of register component method, and I am registering the design component right here. And then the schema for the design component currently has three different possible data values. You could refer to a color, comp params, which is like component parameters, and then props. So here's how it works. At the very basic level, if you were to apply the design component to a 3D model, you wouldn't even have to mention any of these particular schema parameters, if you will. It would just automatically look through that model, try to find if any materials are referencing any of the design keys. And if they are, then it would automatically go forward and assign them to be updated whenever the theme changed. So it is possible that you wouldn't even ever use these if you were only using the design system for 3D models, essentially. Like GLB models at this point is pretty much what I'm expecting people to use in the system. And if you want to use it outside of 3D models, that's fine. Then you will use one of these other interface parameters, like color is the most basic one. Beyond that, if you were making, for example, just a primitive box, and you simply just wanted to have the color change according to a reference to the design theme, then you could just specify color in your assignment of the design component to an entity, and we'll see examples of this. If you are dealing with, for example, an entity that has components of itself, and those components have maybe colors or properties that you want to change with the theme, then you would use this comp component parameters or comp params interface parameter, and that way you could pass in basically basically you would pass in an array where the first element would be the component name and the second element would be in this case, an object that would have the different parameters for that component that would be reliant upon the theme. And then lastly, if you just have the top level properties of an entity, if you just want to change those based upon different values of the theme, then you would use the props. And I'll hopefully make this quite apparent as I give you some examples here. And we'll take a look at those examples now. We'll move over into right over here. We'll come back to that. We'll look at this example over here. And maybe let's go up to the very top over here. So this is a very basic example application. And the application is going to be taking advantage of a lot of asynchronous type of functions or methods, API methods, especially the add method and the set method. And for that case, I'm encapsulating everything in an async function. In fact, it's in an async IFI, if you will, immediately invoked functional expression, and it's asynchronous. So I can use the await keyword everywhere down here at the top level, or at this within this scope, I should say. Going down here for the first time that I'm going to be using the design, I'm going to actually add over here the environment, and I changed this from before. I'm adding the environment with a preset default in the ground flat. Then down here I'm setting the design component on the environment so that the ground color is going to reference the primary key of the theme. Okay, so as the theme changes, if the theme ever updates, then the ground color, there's actually two ground colors in this checkerboard, but the first ground color is essentially going to be changing along with that primary key of whichever theme is active. Okay, let's go down and look at another example. So that one's using comp params because environment is a component within, if you look at over here, this is basically creating a generic entity and then it's applying an environment component to it. So down here I'm using the component parameters interface for the design, and I'm referencing the component, and then here is the parameter that I want to reference according to the theme key. Okay, so hopefully you can understand why I named it comp params, because I'm identifying this component. Okay, so here env over here, this is the entity, and I'm setting this design component on it, and I'm referencing another component that's already on it, and I'm saying that I want to take this parameter of that component and I want to tie it or link it to the theme primary key. Now let's go down and look at another example. The next example of using the, all right, here I actually, at the moment I declared the jukebox, the moment that I actually made it for the first time, I just set the border to a reference of the theme info key. Now you can do this, and you can just directly reference the theme if you're just going to set it once at the very beginning. If you're just going to manually, if you're just going to set the theme once before this, then you never have to actually set the design component on something. You can reference the design parameters or the design theme keys, if you will, just directly through the CS1 design theme and then whatever the key is, if you never plan on changing them. And it will still change according to the theme. If somebody's just going to go into the source code and change the theme, then that would work great with the design team. So I just wanted to point that out. And down here, I'm going into the jukebox and I'm setting the design component on the jukebox. And I'm setting component parameters because in this case, now I actually, in this case, I could have just gotten away. I could have gotten away with not using component parameters. I'm showing you that there's different options here because rather than using the component parameters, because this jukebox it actually maps the top level properties down into the jukebox component. I could have actually done this one with the props interface. So I could have taken the line of using the comp component parameters or the props interface. In this case, I used the component parameters, and the component that I'm affecting is the jukebox component itself. And I am tying the border color, the color of the text, the color of the heading, and the logo Notice the logo will also change, and that's actually a URL. That's an image. So these don't have to be just colors. These can be really anything that's associated with a design theme. As we will see, this could also even mean geometric properties and so forth, as we'll get to. So all of these, or these four aspects of the Jukebox design, will be changing according to the theme. Okay, then down here, let's go down a little further. Let's see the next time I use design. Here I just set, here's a cube, and this cube is actually a 3D model. So that since this cube is a 3D model, the default is if you just set the design on the 3D model, it will automatically check. It will automatically check to see if that particular it will actually go through and see if it has any materials that reference the different theme keys. So that's really great because a lot of people will be populating their scene with 3D models and wanted that to be a really, really short and sweet API because they're already maybe going to be using Blender and they'll be naming the materials according to the different theme keys. In the future, I might extend it beyond materials to geometry of mesh geometry and so forth. But for right now, for the 3D objects, it's just going to be material colors, basically. And at this point, it's really only the main color for the material. I'm not getting into anything like bump maps and other types of assets that material might reference. So, and I can expand this in the future if people are interested in that. Down here, I am setting the design. So here I have a box. This is just a box primitive, and I am setting design on it, referencing the primary key of the theme, and tying that to the color of the box. Okay, so that's just a straight up, just using the color. And then I'm also animating the box a little bit. And then down here we have a sphere. And a sphere is a primitive as well. And I'm just positioning it here as I create it. And then down here I am setting the design component on it. I'm using the props interface. And I am going through the color and the radius. Now it's really important here. In order for this radius to actually connect into the radius for the theme, it's important that I use the props interface right here because radius is not actually a component. Radius is mapped in from this a sphere primitive. It's mapped down into the geometry radius. So that's another reason why you can't just get away with having that one interface called the comp params interface. We also have to have this props interface as well, or interface. Okay, yeah. So let's go ahead down here and then look a little further. Then we're seeing I'm just setting an interval and I'm just switching back and forth between these two themes, the neon theme and the pastel theme. You can have as many themes as you want. You can make changing the themes something that the user does in their setting if that's what you want. You can make it part of the game mechanics where it's going to affect the feel of the game. I mean, it's really just a really broad, generic idea of having these themes to separate the design, what the design team's doing from the developers, so you can switch themes very quickly. So you're not going in and changing colors all out throughout the code whenever you want to switch the theme. But let's go down in here and look at these themes. Here's the neon theme. Notice the neon theme has a self-reference to the name of it, has these different colors with these different keys, basically like Bootstrap. If you look at these names, they're just like Bootstrap. Then down here we have radius is actually one of the keys for the theme, and then logo. So you can add whatever keys you want and make that part of the theme. These don't have to be colors, like I said. Here we have a geometric parameter. Here we have an asset reference for a logo. And then we go down to the pastel theme, different colors. a different radius, a different logo. And let's go see this in action. So if we go over here, we can see what's going on. So we can see the theme switching right there. We can see all these items that are referencing the theme. We got that 3D character right there on the left, that ship character. And it's changing. Many different materials on it are changing according to reference keys of the theme. Okay, and that was all set up in Blender, just changing the materials in Blender to reference the keys of the theme. Now, let's look at the middle section over here, the jukebox. So this jukebox is actually referencing different keys of the theme, including the logo is changing. So we're changing the border color, we're changing different text colors, the heading color, and we're also changing that logo. Okay, and then on the right over here, we just have a very simple, it's a 3D model. I didn't use a primitive box here. I actually made this in Blender. But just the sides of this box have different materials in Blender. Much like over here with this character, it's just much simpler. And in the same way, it's referencing different colors that are keys of the theme. And then finally, we have, well, actually two other things. We have the spinning box. And that spinning box is just changing the color only. And then above that, we have using the props API, we have that sphere where we're changing not only the color, but the radius as well. And all of these things are changing, boom, whenever that theme changes. It's just like, boom, if you go and change the theme at any time, all those things are going to change according to the theme. You can have 1,000 different things in the scene with tens of thousands of properties that are all tied to thematic values, and they will just all change, boom, just like that whenever you set the theme. So I hope that makes some sense, how we can have a design team, like setting up whatever your themes are going to be, all the different colors, maybe even different dimensions of things, layouts of things, and different properties that are kind of thematic, and then having those themes referenceable in all the components. The developers can go in there and just reference those themes. You can have a design team that says basically, I want this part of the game, this asset in the game, to reference these particular parts of the theme. So they can actually have a vision of what they want things to look like from the design perspective, and then the developers can just go right in there, can link things up with references, and then boom, maybe even the themes change down the road. They only have to get changed in one spot in that theme definition. And once that's changed, boom, everything will automatically change according to that. And then on top of that, you can change things dynamically and even expose this to the players of the game, where it becomes, part of the mechanics in the game, or at least the individual settings where you can set the basic theme or look for the game. Okay. Reach out if you have any questions, and I would love to collaborate with you. Take good care.